Gather around, folks, for a tale of artistic wizardry and wonder. And when I say tale of wizardry and wonder, I mean the standard creative process of staring at a blank canvas, too much coffee, procrastination, and finally, in a moment of pure inspiration, creating something truly magical. But let's start at the beginning with the age-old question that comes before the creation of every great work of art. What the hell am I doing here?
So, I'm not really sure I know what I'm doing here. Until a few minutes ago, I was actually sure that it was a phenomenal idea, but now I'm not so sure anymore. And now the question is, what do I do? Do I just abandon the project, or do I just change my mind 5 times before I paint it eventually anyway? Or do I just go for it? Might as well.
Ah yes, the good old overthinker's dilemma. The bane of every creative person's existence and the ultimate test of patience and perseverance. One moment you have a cool idea for a painting, and the next you basically question every decision in your life. Luckily, over the years I have come to learn that my brain is not nearly as smart as it thinks it is, so I've gotten pretty good at turning it off before it gets lost in an endless cycle of double-checking and over-analyzing. At least when it comes to making art. I call this the paint first, think later approach. And case in point, the moment I started painting, I was just as excited about this painting as the first time a voice in my head, seemingly out of nowhere, whispered, "Wouldn't it be cool if you painted Snow White, but with a little twist, a modern interpretation?" A simple idea, almost naive and childlike, even mundane if you think about it for a bit too long. But I'm a simple man and I like simple ideas, so a perfect fit for me. And so I decided to try my hands at this concept, and you never know what comes out of it or where it may lead you. Interestingly, sometime during the making of this video, I found out that Disney is apparently currently working on a live-action remake of Snow White, which makes this video even more interesting. Because it's not only similar with some of the design choices, but we can now actually make a little comparison in the end. Multi-million-dollar business versus run-of-the-mill, ordinary professional artist with a YouTube channel. But before we go there, let's start at the beginning, with maybe the most important step in the whole making of this painting: the painting surface. Specifically, the size and, in this case, the shape. For whatever reason, when I think of fairy tales, my mind immediately goes to a round canvas. Maybe because the round canvas doesn't have any hard edges or sharp corners, which, in a way, if you think about it, complements the character and tone of a classic fairy tale. Or maybe just because it was the first thing that popped into my mind and I thought it would look kinda cool. I guess we'll never know, but a round painting ground is what I ended up going with, and everything that followed built on this very first decision. If you're curious about how I prepared the panel for this painting, I actually recorded a little guide/tutorial over on Patreon, which explains my very simple yet super effective process. And you can also find a real-time video of how I created this painting here, which shows you the complete process from the very first to the very last brushstroke. So painting surface, round panel, check. So far so good. Next up was the idea and concept itself. Now, I wish I could tell you that the painting is the result of months of research and gathering inspiration and learning from the masters, all in pursuit of reimagining a classic fairy tale to explore the depth of human emotion and storytelling. But let's be real, that's rarely how the creative mind works, and that's rarely how inspiration works. It's more like you have an idea pop into your mind, seemingly out of nowhere, and then you just roll with it and figure things out as you go. At least that's how it was for me with this painting. The initial spark of inspiration for this came from, what else could it be, watching YouTube videos. Specifically a few videos with AI art that I stumbled across that fascinated me more than anything I've seen in a while. All asking the same simple question. What if? What if our favorite characters and franchises were fantasy movies from the 1980s? World of Warcraft, The Witcher, Dark Souls. The collection of AI-generated images that came from this very simple question was so surprising and fascinating to me that I was completely mesmerized by it. Now, I don't want to go into the whole AI art topic, and most people can probably guess what my thoughts on the whole thing are, but I do want to say just this. Always be skeptical about the things you hear on the internet, friends. The truth does not belong to the one who shouts the loudest. And I'm gonna leave it at that. So after stumbling upon these intriguing videos, I spent days analyzing and studying the images and taking notes on how and why these worked so well. Color, composition, framing, art direction, etc. And I actually ended up with some interesting findings, but that's a whole different story, maybe something for another video. The most important part is that I was inspired. Inspired to reimagine something myself. And that's the creative spark that started it all. And before I knew it, the word Snow White popped into my mind and my brain took the idea and ran with it. At this point, I had a vague idea, I had a painting surface, and the only thing left to do was to actually bring the concept to life. My main goal was to create a modern interpretation that still stays true to the original character, which actually isn't as hard as one might imagine. In the case of Snow White, certain aspects of her design make her look like Snow White, rather than any of the other Disney princesses. And the only question you have to ask yourself is, which of these elements can you take away or simplify before the character becomes unrecognizable? Simple as that. It's easy to imagine Snow White without the hair bow, for example, or with a different hairstyle, or without her signature red lips. None of those changes would make her character unrecognizable. But the moment you change her dress, the character doesn't feel the same anymore, especially in the combination with the red and blue color scheme. So I knew that whatever I do to the character, if I wanted to stay true to the original and capture the essence, I had to somehow incorporate her signature dress and ideally the iconic red and blue color scheme. It's really very basic design knowledge. A good illustrator, designer or concept artist knows how to do this at the very least intuitively, which makes it all the more baffling to me that so many modern movies and TV shows seem to have such a hard time with this. Overly detailed and unrealistic costumes, unnecessarily complicated and contrived design choices, and unrecognizable and unbelievable characters everywhere. Just look at Rings of Power for a prime example of amateurish and lousy design and art direction. Why do hobbits decorate their hair intricately when they don't even care to clean and wash themselves? Or why do elves who live thousands of years have hairstyles that not only need to be cut and refreshed every few weeks, but also can only be held in place with modern hair products? Nobody knows. But getting back to my version of Snow White here. For the overall feel of the painting, I was shooting for a mix of 80s fantasy movie meets Guillermo del Toro, or something along those lines, all while adding my own style to it, which ended up being so much fun, so enjoyable, and so interesting, quite frankly, that after a while the painting almost seemed to paint itself. And that is my take on a classic fairy tale character. My redesign definitely deviates more from the original, but I would argue that even though it does, it still does a better job of capturing the character's essence than what Disney managed to come up with, at least in my humble opinion. Of course I'm biased, sure, but hey, I'll leave it up to you. Let me know in the comments down below which version you would rather like to see in a live-action Snow White movie. And now, the only question left is, would you like to see me redesign and take on another classic character? If so, let me know in the comments down below which. Thank you all for watching, friends, and I will see you in the next video. Have a good one.